In what basic ways does Buddhism differ from other Western religions?
Well, other Western religions, presumably one means simply Christianity and Judaism. Perhaps one can also add Islam, because it is Middle Eastern. It's not fully Far Eastern, one might say. All these religions are theistic. They all believe in a personal God, a God who is the creator of the universe and who governs the universe with his providence. I think to someone coming newly to Buddhism, the first thing that strikes them is the, to them, purely negative fact that in Buddhism there is no personal God. Some people really welcome this. I mean, I myself welcomed this because I never had believed in God. So when I discovered that in Buddhism there was no God, I was, well, overjoyed. But some people, on discovering that in Buddhism there is no God, are rather dismayed. Even people who are otherwise sympathetic to Buddhism. And sometimes they try to smuggle him in. And they say, well, the Buddha may not have believed in a personal God, but he must have believed in an impersonal God. But actually in the Buddhist scriptures, there's no basis for that sort of assertion at all. And we therefore feel, most Buddhists feel, that man's need, for God or a God is not a real, not a genuine need. You start feeling that the need for God or a God when you just feel your own inadequacy, and when you can't really believe in yourself. You can't believe in your own capacity for development. You don't believe in your own worth. And I must say, quite a few people who come along to us in the West and become interested in our movement, that is to say, in the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, which I started in 1967, come crippled with emotions of inadequacy and guilt and unworthiness, which very, very often are directly traceable to a Christian upbringing. So in Buddhism, we don't have a God. There's no God. The Buddha doesn't take the place of God. This is perhaps the biggest difference between Buddhism on the one hand and Western religions on the other.
But aren't you asking a lot for people who find happiness, not the people who can't find happiness, but people who do find happiness in the idea of a personal God, to go along with your revolutionary wish to change society and admit the Buddhist way of thinking into themselves?
Well, we deal with the people who actually come along to us. And those people who come along to us clearly are not people who are satisfied, with Christianity. And for the time being at least, we are dealing with those who come along. Our hands are more than full.
What would you say to the yearnings for some radical Christians now for what they describe Christian Buddhism? Do you think that is a possible combination?
I find that very interesting. I personally see it against a background of ancient Gnosticism. To me it's very interesting because such Christians seem to feel rather hampered by the traditional Christian God, the creator of the universe, especially in his what we may call Jehovah aspect, which isn't always very pleasant. But they feel very much drawn to the figure of Christ. They don't want to give up Christ, they don't want to give up Jesus, but they're quite willing to ditch God. That seems to be the position. So that does, in a way, come a bit close to Buddhism, in the sense that, yes, you dispense with God, and your highest ideal is a human being, because if you ditch God, well, Christ becomes a human being. He can't be the incarnation of God if there is no God to be the incarnation of. So if you ditch God and you end up with a human being whom you regard as a perfect human being, you do come a bit close to Buddhism. So I find this whole idea of Christian Buddhism or Buddhist Christianity quite interesting. I remember some years ago I had a discussion with the then Bishop of Woolwich, John Robinson. I'd read, while I was still in India, his book Honest to God, or at least I'd heard about it. So when I came back to this country, I gave a couple of lectures, one on Buddhism and Honest to God, and the other on Buddhism and the New Reformation. And a friend of mine, brought us together, and we had a very interesting discussion. And I felt at that time that the bishop's thought was really heading in the direction of Christianity. So I pressed him a little on this point when we met, as much as one can press a bishop. He wasn't prepared to concede, that his line of thought led in the direction of Buddhism, but I actually felt that it did, to a great extent. And I'm rather sorry that he seems to have sort of withdrawn in a way and retrieved, Orthodox Christianity.